Guess you don't count. That was the first thing my sister threw at me the moment I saw my name pushed outside into the hallway. Right next to a stainless steel trash bin polished so perfectly, it seemed placed there just to reflect my humiliation. The hallway reeked of wilted lilies mixed with bleach. A kind of cleanliness, so harsh it felt cruel. From inside the ballroom, the DJ's voice echoed slow counts leading into the first dance, as if the whole world was preparing to celebrate, while I was left behind the closed doors. My mother adjusted her pearl necklace, the gesture soft but cold as glass. My father glanced away, as though my existence was more inconvenient than confronting the truth. I tightened my grip on the gift I had wrapped the night before the silver ribbon, leaving a mark across my palm smoothed the wine-colored dress, and chose silence. No arguing, no begging, no tears. I stood up, the faint clicks of my heels tapping against the stone floor, and walked out into the Vermont, wind cold, sharp, and more honest than anyone in my family had ever been. 5 minutes later, inside the ballroom, the chandeliers went dark, and a scream split the room in half. Before I tell you what happened right after that brutal moment, what almost shattered me, yet also became the thing that woke me up, I want to ask you one small favor. Tell me which city you're watching from, so that I can feel that, somewhere out there, there are others who've also been pushed outside the door by their own family. There were small things about that wedding. The more I looked, the more they felt wrong. I stood in the hallway, the cold metallic sting of the trash bin still lingering against my back, and wondered why I kept hoping they would ever be different. The Blake family had never been fair. Since we were young, Madelyn had been Mother's gem, the one shown off at every party, the one favored in every decision, the one constantly told she deserved the best. And me, I was the easy child, the kind of daughter people assumed could handle everything on her own, so no one needed to pay attention. Mother Lorraine once said something that seemed light as air. Emery, you're stronger. You don't need as much as your sister. But the truth is, I did. I just wasn't seen. Inside the ballroom, everything was too perfect, too polished, too staged. The way Mother glanced at Madelyn, the way she adjusted the shawl on her daughter's shoulders as if she were fixing an expensive display piece, the way Madelyn kept looking toward the door, like she was afraid someone might show up at the wrong moment. And Nathan the groom walked past her with a kind of hesitation I had never seen in newlyweds. Something wasn't lining up. It wasn't just my seat. It was the entire atmosphere pressing down on that room, as if everyone was desperately trying to keep a mask from slipping. 3 weeks before the wedding, I ran into one of Madelyn's former stylists in downtown Charleston. She recognized me immediately. "Oh, Emery, Madelyn's sister. Congratulations on the wedding. I hope everything is still under control." The way she said "under control" made me stop. Then she gave a small laugh and added a sentence that sounded almost accidental. "Madelyn has always been very good at making men believe whatever she wants. Just a few tears at the right moment." I didn't think much of it back then, but as I stood in that hallway, the salty air from Charleston drifting through the door crack, her words returned with the clarity of an echo. And that was when I understood this wedding wasn't simply about two people. It was a plan, and I was the only one standing outside of it. The past never disappears. It just waits for the right day to rise on its own. As I stood in the hallway of Prescott Manor, I suddenly remembered a summer day in the garden of our old house in Charleston. That year I was 8. Madelyn was 10. Harold, my father, was setting up the camera. Mother Lorraine was fixing Madelyn's hair, and I stood a few steps behind them. Holding a doll no one remembered the name of, Emery. "Move in a little," Father said, though his eyes stayed glued to Madelyn as if all that mattered was getting the lighting right for her. When the photo was developed, Madelyn was in the center white dress, a smile bright enough to look staged. And me, I saw myself blurred on the left edge, as if I had just happened to be there, accidentally caught in someone else's frame. I was 12 when I first understood what it meant to be the child everyone forgets. That morning, the whole family rushed around getting ready for the celebration of Madelyn's art scholarship. Guests kept arriving. The 3-tier cake was placed in the center of the table. No one remembered it was my birthday. I quietly walked to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. Still smelling of vanilla from the cake the day before, a small leftover piece remained. I took a spoon and ate it, standing under the warm yellow light. The cold cream numbing my tongue, but somehow warmer than all the birthday wishes I never received. 3 years later, during Thanksgiving, Mother asked me to go upstairs and get the family album. I opened the drawer and found a large scrapbook wrapped in navy blue fabric with worn gold trim. I flipped through each page. Photos of Madelyn's awards. The trip to Myrtle Beach. A page labeled First Daughter. A page called Teenage Achievements. Then, a blank space. A page that once had the label Second Daughter. But the paper had been torn out so cleanly it was frightening, like someone wanted to make sure no trace of me remained. When I asked Mother where's my page, she didn't look up. Just adjusted the tablecloth. Then she said, in a tone so soft, it almost sounded harmless, "Emery, you're always fine. You don't need to appear in everything." A calm sentence, yet enough to turn me into a shadow inside my own family. Standing in the freezing hallway of Prescott Manor, with the polished trash bin reflecting my face, I realized everything was repeating. I was being pushed to the sidelines again, standing at the edge of the frame again, erased from the shared story again. Not by accident. Never by accident. The Blake family had always been this way. They kept only what made them proud. And I had never been on that list. And at that wedding, I was about to witness the cruelest thing they had ever done to me right in front of everyone. I began to realize silence was not as gentle as I once believed. The sea breeze drifting in from the Charleston shore slipped into the hallway, carrying the scent of salt, damp wood, and the faintest whisper of waves. I leaned back against the cold stone wall, watching the gold outline of the ballroom lights reflect through the clear glass. I used to stand like this behind everyone, with no one asking, "Are you okay?" and no one wondering why I was quiet. But this time was different, not because they had changed, but because I was seeing everything more clearly. When I was little, silence was how I survived. No arguing, no talking back, and no causing trouble. I thought that was gentleness, maturity, knowing my place. But standing in the hallway of Prescott Seaside Manor, hearing the laughter and clinking glasses from inside the ballroom, the silence inside me was harder than stone. It wasn't the silence of someone wounded. It was the silence of someone watching, someone remembering every detail, someone preparing for a moment they assumed I would never have. Through the large glass door, I saw Mother Lorraine bend down to adjust the veil on Madelyn. A gentle gesture, but reserved for only one person. Madelyn stood in the center of the glowing room, her white dress fanning out as if swallowing all attention. She smiled sweetly at the guests, her eyes shimmering with the kind of artificial shine that looks like water being stirred. Nathan the groom stood in a corner, hand wrapped around a champagne glass, looking at Madelyn as if he were trying to convince himself everything was fine. But the corner of his mouth told a different story. I stood there, separated from them by only a sheet of glass, one step away, yet as far as an entire lifetime. Being placed in the hallway wasn't a mistake. It was repetition, a Blake family tradition. In every photo, I was pushed to the left edge. Birthdays forgotten. The scrapbook page was ripped out completely. Those fragments of memory no longer hurt. They only made one thing unmistakably clear. I had never belonged in that room. And today, I no longer needed to. I stood a little straighter, took a long breath, letting the salty wind fill my chest. For the first time in many years, I felt myself every heartbeat, every clean, sharp thought. They could continue pretending I did not exist, but I no longer needed their recognition. I was not the girl standing at the edge of the frame. I was not the page torn away. I was the one seeing the truth, and this time, I wasn't looking away. And just when I thought I could stand there a few minutes more, the ballroom door swung open. The person I least expected to see stepped out to look for me. I had never seen her afraid. Until that moment. The ballroom door swung open, and Madelyn stepped out as if only the sea breeze had the right to lift the hem of her wedding dress. The golden light pouring across the white lace formed a perfect halo around her, perfect in exactly the way my mother always bragged about. Madelyn stood before me, one hand gently spreading her dress. Her lips curved, but her eyes cold and calculating. "Emery," she said, her voice soft as honey but sharper than a blade. "Are you standing here alone?" A question that already knew the answer the kind asked, only to make someone feel small. She moved closer, lowering her voice just enough for only me to hear. "This place suits you better than inside that room. You know that, don't you?" I could smell the mix of expensive perfume and entitlement, the scent only people too familiar with being adored ever carry. Madelyn tilted her head at me, her smile frozen like a mask, beautiful but false. "You're always so easy to manage, never causing trouble. That's why Mother trusts me with everything important." I listened, but this time, I didn't swallow it. I straightened, letting the hallway light hit my eyes in a way that made me look calmer than I felt. "That's good for you," I replied softly. "You always know how to put everyone exactly where you want them." My voice wasn't raised, but I saw Madelyn's eyelid twitch. Just once. A tiny reaction, but real. Her eyes shifted down to the box I was holding. Only half a second, but enough to reveal something I had never seen in her before: worry. Her hand clenched her bouquet so tightly a few petals fell onto the stone floor. I tilted my head, deliberately letting her see that I had noticed. "Don't worry," I said slowly. "Everything will be opened, in the right place." Madelyn stepped back a small, involuntary retreat. For the first time in my life, she looked unsure of what she was controlling. When she turned and walked back into the ballroom, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. The moment the box was opened, the entire atmosphere of that wedding would change, and there would be nothing she could do to stop it. That night, the truth didn't need a voice. It rose on its own, through the hallway window. The ballroom of Prescott Seaside Manor glowed like a magnificent painting. Crystal chandeliers dropped ribbons of light onto the polished wooden floor. White floral arrangements hanging from the ceiling swayed gently with the cold breeze from the oceanfront windows. The violin played a familiar melody, soft as a breath, the scent of candle wax, champagne, and orchids blended together, forming a perfect shell around Madelyn. Right before it shattered completely, he stood outside, my hand resting on the cold glass frame. Under the flickering lights, everything seemed to move in slow motion, as if the world were stepping aside to let the truth emerge. The bridesmaid named Harper suddenly squealed Madelyn. "This gift box is gorgeous. Everyone wants to see the bride open it." That sound spread quickly, like an invitation. Guests turned, smiling, raising their glasses. Madelyn hid her tension behind a smile she had practiced for years in the mirror. She walked toward the gift table, her wedding heels tapping lightly against the wooden floor. Nathan stood a few steps away, his gaze fixed, not with his usual tenderness, but with something tight and unreadable. I saw the exact moment Madelyn touched the lid of the box. Her shoulder flinched ever so slightly. The lid snapped open with a soft click, cold enough to send a chill through the air. A crystal photo frame lay on top. Beneath it were neatly folded papers, white sheets, black letters, brutally clear. Madelyn opened the first page. I didn't hear her inhale, but I saw her chest tighten. Nathan stepped forward, taking the paper from his bride-to-be's hands. He read each line. His eyes changed color from stunned to hurt to cold. Guests began whispering, "What's happening? Something's wrong." One bridesmaid unconsciously read aloud, the line staring back at her. "He really is easy to fool. Just a few tears and I'll get everything." The crowded room suddenly felt small. Patricia Prescott, Nathan's mother, stepped forward. She pulled out another sheet from the box. Her voice was low and sharp. These messages were sent to me this morning by your stylist. Accidentally dropped into the wrong group chat. Madelyn's face turned pale, like the frosting on the wedding cake. The violinist hit a wrong note, the screech slicing through the air. Someone dropped a champagne glass. Shards scattering across the floor. A little girl burst into tears from the shock. Lorraine lifted her hand to her mouth, eyes wide with disbelief. Harold looked down, lips pressed into a thin line. They had protected Madelyn all her life. But in this moment, no one could save her. I stood outside the door, my breathing steady, my heartbeat calm. It's not like that. Those messages are fake. Emery did this. She's jealous. Madelyn's voice cracked sharp. Desperate. Nathan lifted the third sheet. The words stark under the chandelier light. Just wait until we move into Prescott House. That home will be mine. Madelyn reached out to snatch it back. But Nathan pulled it out of her reach. You deceived me, he said. Each word as hard as a seashell crushed by waves. And you thought you could control my entire life with a few tears? His voice wasn't loud, but it carried far enough for everyone to hear. Patricia looked straight at Madelyn's face. The truth never stays still. Dear girl. Madelyn turned toward me. Her eyes were blazing red. Stripped of arrogance. Filled with the primal fear of someone who realizes everything is gone. Emery. Her voice trembled like someone slipping off the edge of a cliff. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. And just as Madelyn screamed in desperation, trying to hold on to anything she could, a cold decision from Nathan made the entire room fall silent. A decision that would end the wedding right then and there. And then, in the middle of the crystal-lit room, every performance fell apart. The sound of the waves outside the glass seemed to sink away as Nathan placed the final sheet of paper on the gift table. He lifted his head. His eyes no longer warm, no longer hopeful, just the gaze of a man who had truly woken up after months of being led by the nose. This ceremony, he began, his voice low and restrained, ends here. The music stopped instantly. A violin string scraped in a missed note, like someone gasping in the crowd. The entire ballroom froze. No one could even swallow. No, Nathan. No. You don't understand. Madelyn lunged forward, grabbing his arm. Her voice high, broken, and terrified. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, blending with the golden light, making her look both pitiful and frightening. I was set up. Emery hates me. She always. Stop. Nathan pulled his arm away from her, as if pulling it out of fire. Guests stepped back, creating space. A few lifted their phones out of instinct. LED lights flickering across Madelyn's face, illuminating her desperation. She tried to smile, tried to perform the role of the poor bride, but her voice trembled uncontrollably. It's just a misunderstanding. You trust me. Right. No one answered. That silence was more brutal than any scream. Patricia stepped out from the crowd like a judge summoned at the exact right moment. Enough. Only 2 words. Yet the entire room fell quiet. She reclaimed the paper from Nathan's hand, lifting it under the crystal lights. Everything in here. Her voice carried evenly. I was sent to me this morning by your own stylist. Madelyn. No one fabricated the words that you wrote. Madelyn opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Patricia stepped closer, her gaze unshaken. My son is not a puppet for you to manipulate. The guests held their breath. No one dared blink. Lorraine stepped forward, her hands trembling. Madelyn, sweetheart. Let me explain. Madelyn jerked her hand away from her mother, as if shocked by a live wire. Don't touch me. You always ruin everything. Lorraine froze, lips trembling. Speechless, Harold moved forward, shoulders heavy with the weight of 20 years of mistakes. We have favored you far too much, he said, his voice soft but clear as a hammer strike. And it made Emery bear everything. The entire ballroom turned toward Emery, toward me still standing at the doorway. The chandelier light reflected across my face. But I didn't look away this time. Madelyn stabbed a finger toward me, her eyes burning red. She did it. She wants to ruin this wedding. She's jealous. I stood still. No arguing. No snapping back. No tears. Patricia turned toward Madelyn, slicing the air with her words. The truth was in your hands. She didn't put it there. A verdict. A final sentence. Madelyn stumbled back a step, as if the ground beneath her had cracked open. But before anyone could say another word, Nathan made a decision that sent the entire room erupting, a decision that would drag everyone out to the dark beach, where even more truth was waiting to be exposed. I realized sometimes winning is not about staying. It's about walking away. I left the ballroom through the side door, my heels sinking slightly into the cold sand. Outside, the Charleston night laid a thin layer of mist over the ocean. The golden lights from Prescott Manor cast long shimmering streaks on the sand, like the cracks of a mirror that had just shattered. I took a deep breath. For the first time all evening, there were no screams, no trembling violins, and no glass breaking, only the steady sound of the waves, like someone gently placing a hand on my shoulder, saying, "It's all right. It's your turn to breathe." I heard unhurried footsteps behind me. Nathan stopped a few steps away, one hand in his pocket, his face exhausted but clearer than ever. "Emery," he said softly, his voice like the wind brushing past the edge of his tuxedo. "I don't know where to even begin." I didn't turn around, but I heard him exhale. Tonight I saw more things clearly, more about her and about myself. A short pause. "Thank you for not letting me walk into a life built on lies," I replied, my voice light as shifting sand. "I didn't do it for you. I did it for the truth." Nathan gave a tired smile. "I know. And because of that, I owe you more than a thank you." He stepped back, leaving behind a kind of respect I had never once received from my own family. The balcony light from the manor cast a glow when Patricia walked out. She stood beside me, not too close, not too far. "I used to think you were just an outsider," she said plainly, without the usual high society politeness. "But tonight, I realized you were the only one who saw the truth from the beginning." The sea wind tugged at her dress, carrying her voice seasoned, steady, not cold but weighty. "You deserve more respect than what they've ever given you." I tilted my head slightly, saying nothing, but in that silence, for the first time, I felt truly seen. The rustle of satin, followed by a familiar perfume. My mother. She stood in front of me, her eyes red but without tears, the kind of redness from someone who finally recognizes the harm they've unknowingly caused all their life. "Emery." Her voice shook like the tide rolling onto the shore. I was wrong. Wrong for so many years." Harold stood behind her, his hand on her shoulder, as if saying with his silence, "I was wrong too. I didn't know how to love both of you," she admitted, "and I made you strong in ways you should never have had to be." I looked at her, then at the ocean. "I don't blame you," I said slowly. "I meant it. I just can't live that way anymore." Lorraine bowed her head for the first time in her life, like an old door finally giving way. A small sob slipped through the wind. I turned. Madelyn sat near the waterline, her white wedding dress blown aside by the wind, the lace hem soaked and clinging to the dark sand. Her hair was tangled, mascara streaking into black smudges like ink washed by rain. "Emery." Her voice was dry and fractured, like someone running from a storm they created themselves. I don't know how to live when no one chooses me anymore." I looked at her for a long moment. Turns out, beneath the perfect performance, Madelyn was just a person, always terrified of being left behind. I stepped closer, but not too close. You don't need my forgiveness. I said, You need to forgive yourself. Madelyn broke into tears. Not the kind meant to earn sympathy, but the kind of crying from someone who finally sees the truth in the mirror. I turned away, letting the sea wind lift the hem of my dress, walking along the sand as if stepping out of a dark room that had lasted more than 20 years. And before I left that beach that night, I knew my life was about to open into a new chapter, one where my family was no longer the barrier. That morning, I understood that peace isn't something someone gives you, it's something you choose for yourself. The Charleston sunlight slipped through the thin curtains like a gentle greeting. I opened my eyes in a silent room and realized nothing was weighing on my chest anymore. Last night there had been a storm, but this morning there was only the ocean, flat as a sheet of paper, wide and calm, in a way I had never seen before. I got up, opened the window, and let the cold sea breeze brush my cheek. I once thought freedom came from other people's approval. Now I understood freedom comes from choosing to walk away from the places that make you small. I looked at the wine-colored dress hanging over the back of the chair, the only thing left from the chaotic night. It was no longer armor for me to hide inside. It was just a memory, beautiful, painful. But, past. I packed my belongings and locked the door behind me without looking back. Not running away, but stepping toward a new life, where I don't need anyone's permission to be myself. And if you've ever had to walk out of a door like that, I hope you know that is not weakness. That is courage. And if this story touched you, leave a comment. Please like and subscribe to the channel so I can share many more meaningful and beautiful stories with you. Because your voice truly matters.